All right, Mike Bohn here with Jon Anik in the aftermath of the UFC 305 press conference, and you were in the middle of all that, John, with Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya. Craziness. I think we were waiting for things to finally pop off like that. It was a little tame between them, and man, did it pop off.
Yeah, a lot of passion, a lot of festivity. Perth, Western Australia is just an unbelievable place to come call mixed martial arts. I actually posted on social media, it'd be nice to bottle up this energy and take it back to the United States of America. But this feud is real, and even though our fighter meeting with Dricus du Plessis was largely rooted in him just showering buckets of respect upon Israel Adesanya's legacy and everything that he's accomplished, the backdrop to this one is definitely friction and heat, and for a lot of MMA fans, that's the best of backdrops. So we're very excited to call this fucking thing here in a few hours.
You have been in a number of these press conference settings now. Where does this rank in terms of like the tension? You were right there. I don't know if anyone can compare the feelings of literally being right in between those two guys when Israel is emotional as he was. Have you felt that kind of tension, emotion in that spot before?
Well, I did a stare down not all that long ago with Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier, and that felt pretty tense, right? And maybe that took on a tone that people were not expectant that it would take on. But yes, I mean, this was definitely a different type of feeling coursing through my veins. And you never know what ceremonial weigh-ins are going to hold. You never know exactly what press conferences are going to hold. So we knew we'd have a great crowd. I mean, it was literally packed to the nines, as you can attest. And you never know if there are going to be headline producing moments. We certainly had a few today, and I think anyone who has listened to my podcast over the years knows how much respect I have for Israel Adesanya as competitor, as human being. He is an elite human being. He is the real article, as John Candy said in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and we did our 12th straight fighter meeting for a championship fight with Israel Adesanya, and he's never been late. He's always here in person, even when he's staying off site, and you know, we'll see what he can do here Sunday morning, but I'm not sure I've ever seen him in a better place.
But are you surprised that Dricus was able to get him that emotional? I mean, he was crying up there, and I think that surprised a lot of people. I understand the emotion, his family's there and stuff, but like for that to come out of him, I don't know if people thought he was going to get that emotional. Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think he can properly compartmentalize it, though. I do think he has this inexorable attachment to his family and his roots, and they were all right there. And you know, I didn't cry much in my 30s, but I've made up for lost time in my 40s, right? So I do think that it's not something I would lean too heavily into. I also think that he's getting ready for a weight cut, so there are a lot of different things that maybe could have triggered it. But you know, perhaps with other athletes, I would levy some concern, but not in this case.
Okay, I love that. But on the other side of the coin, Dricus, second fighter he's made like get that emotional and like shed tears at a press conference. When do we start giving this man respect as like one of the better talkers in MMA?
There is no doubt, and not unlike Conor McGregor, there's nothing really scripted. Certainly there is pre-thought, but he's just orating naturally, and you're right, he is effectively getting under the skin of high-level elite opponents that you know, maybe shouldn't be taking that sort of bait. But again, I just sort of waxed poetic on Israel Adesanya. Dricus du Plessis is the fucking man, right? To watch what this guy has done in his UFC career and just methodically go about his business. And I think when you're sort of a man of truth as he is, you're very comfortable in your own skin. And, you know, I don't think that he has really emoted too much when it comes to this fight. And I think as far as Dricus's methodology and his mentality is concerned, that's a great thing. I'm glad that I'm not allowed to bet on fights. I know this is a pick'em right now. I truly think it could go either way, and it's going to be wild Sunday morning. I know your trek here was an arduous one, but we're happy for a main event of this caliber.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the ones, like, when it was announced, I was like, I have to be there. This is something we've been waiting for a while. Obviously, it's, like you said, a long journey, but I had this one circled on the calendar, and once this is gone, I mean, I don't know, the one I'm probably most excited for is Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria, but this one was the one that really stood out to me. I had to be here.
It's incredible. It really is. And obviously it started brewing at UFC 290. The roles are now reversed, and it shall be done here on Sunday morning. Yes, UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi, bro. There's like 7 main events. And I know I said this maybe about UFC 299 and UFC 300. I did think on paper top that, but I'm not sure I've been assigned a deeper card than UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. But yeah, this is as far as I can come from South Florida, and I like to have fun with the journey on social media and see if I can get people to be like, yeah, dude, you have a dream job. It's like, yeah, dude, I'm fucking 37 hours in. But yeah, dude, this is a main event, obviously, that we're very happy to be here for, and I do think there's a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to the pay-per-view card as well. And I just must say, Tai Tuivasa, bro, the love affair that this country has with him is absolutely absurd, and yet I totally get it. Like, I don't know what Tai's going to do to make money when his fighting career is over, but, dude, just set up like a pop shop and everybody will come pay you. Like, this man's energy is infectious. I'm going to go buy some Tai Tuivasa merchandise as soon as we get off the air.
How much pressure is on Tai, do you think, for this fight? He's been in a 4-fight. I don't know if he's the only fighter in UFC history who's had multiple 4-fight losing skids. I'd have to look that one up. But obviously, in between those was the 5-fight knockout streak. So he has rebounded from it before, but that's multiple fights, less damage ago, less age, all those things ago. So is there a lot of pressure on this man, you think?
There is no doubt. And there was a lot of pressure on Biggie Boy in his main event against Shamil Gaziev, and I thought he fought very mechanically and really well in that spot. But yeah, dude, there's buckets of pressure on Tai Tuivasa. He's a guy who's going to retain his job, I think, with 7 successive UFC heavyweight losses. Not that he will ever get there. You know, I think this is a pretty good spot for him, if I'm being real. And I also feel like he looks like he's in tremendous shape. But yeah, man, he's got an entire nation behind him. And there's so much money to be made for Tai, and I do believe athletically he's one of the more athletic heavyweights in this division. And oftentimes when the commitment has been there, as it was during this training camp in Dubai, the results have followed. So I expect Tai to perform. I expect him to be focused, keep that guard tight. I mean, I shook Biggie Boy's hand today. I need a cast. So it's a great heavyweight fight, and, you know, two really respectable giants. So.
Co-main event is solid out flyweight, but I'm more interested, to be honest, in the fight between Mateusz Gamrot and Dan Hooker. Interesting thing, Gamrot comes to the media day, says, you know, if I win this, I want to fight rematch Arman for the interim title because Islam's hurt. If he gets, like, you know, out for a while and they do an interim belt, I want that rematch. It'll be easier this time. Do you think an interim title at lightweight is even fair to talk about right now, considering Islam just fought in June?
No, I certainly don't. But there are a lot of different circumstances that result in interim title fights. And as a guy who is charged with calling these pay-per-views, and I'm sort of insulated a little bit, I kind of get it, right? Like, ultimately, an interim champion can emerge for myriad reasons. But as I've told Tom Aspinall publicly and privately, right, like, I consider you an undisputed champion, right? You fought for the interim heavyweight championship when the undisputed champion wasn't able to go for whatever reason. So I don't know what the timeline has to be for a champion like Islam Makhachev, right? I mean, do we have a ballpark 12 months if he has to miss a calendar year? Do you do an interim champion? It's really tough at 155 pounds because you have a guy like Mateusz Gamrot who's won 8 of 9. He's backed up for the championship before, and yet it feels like a win Saturday night or Sunday morning might not even be enough, and it might be still a 2-year logjam that gets in his way if Islam loses to Arman and they have to run that one back. So this has long been the UFC's deepest division. I think Dan Hooker might have something to say about all of this. You know, far be it from me as the play-by-play guy to suggest that Dan Hooker's a live underdog. Yes. I wouldn't suggest that Mateusz Gamrot is overconfident in the matchup per se, even though he was just spewing and dripping confidence out of every orifice. But Dan Hooker said he didn't get good till like a year ago, and I kind of lean into that. So,
yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, lightweight always a great division, and yeah, that's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I said to Mateusz at the media day, I'm like, do you look at someone like Bilal Muhammad and somewhat similar, you know, criticize style a little bit, the hard path, you got to take the difficult fights, it's going to be an extra step, and like, do you take that as motivation? And he was like, yeah, like maybe a little bit, but I don't know, I see those parallels.
There's no doubt. And I think for Mateusz Gamrot, stylistically, maybe he's not everybody's cup of tea. But again, for me, he's all offense all the time. He is so good in all phases of mixed martial arts. And sometimes when you have a wrestler like that, you wonder if he was just forced to kickbox in a fight, how he would do, right? His wrestling's so goddamn good, and he's been doing it for so long that you understand why that oftentimes in these matchups is the path of least resistance. But yeah, we're all very happy for Bilal Muhammad, who knew that he was only going to get one opportunity, and man, did he maximize it. And yeah, we're still kind of celebrating over at Team Muhammad here. So.
Yeah, no doubt. And just last thing, going back to the top, I was talking to Daniel Cormier in the same seat a few minutes ago, and we were talking about you know, the impact of Israel if he wins this. 3-time single division champion. Only Randy Couture has done that. John Jones would have if he didn't get his no contest taken, or his win over Cormier taken away to a no contest. But in your mind, like, how special is that? Because Daniel referenced his interview with Dricus, and he was like, that's not an accomplishment. Like, it's an indictment because you've lost the title twice to get it back 3 times. Like, it's nothing to be proud of. I kind of disagree because, I mean, anytime you can reclimb, I think it's almost more impressive. like the people who are able to fail and come back to that title. But I don't know, what's your take on that whole thing?
Well, there are a lot of different circumstances. And Dricus du Plessis, in our fighter meeting, you referenced what DC said. I don't know that it was all that disrespectful, but usually it does mean, unless you're Dominic Cruz, well, I guess he did lose the belt at one point in time, but if you don't lose it due to injury, that you do lose the belt and regain it. And in the case of Izzy here, he is getting this opportunity, and rightfully so, off a championship loss. So it's a big deal. I mean, oftentimes I've said, like, the hardest thing to do in this sport is lose your belt and regain it, but I don't take much surprise in du Plessis leaning into the facts that, he has lost the belt twice. But, when Dominic Cruz, for example, my broadcast partner, was able to regain the belt over TJ Dillashaw in 2016, one of the greatest accomplishments in MMA of all time. So Izzy, to me, is right there with Anderson Silva. Just below him is the greatest middleweight of all time. And I think what Izzy did in that 20-month stretch in the peak of his career is maybe the greatest 20-month stretch for any champion in any division when you combine activity and realizing success in title fights. So, yeah, I'm pumped, bro.
Yeah, so last thing, if Dricus wins, I mean, he'll have beaten 3 of the past 4 middleweight champions, Alex Pereira being the exception. He's not a fight that he could get right now, at least at 185. But are we going to have to start having some hard conversations about the all-time middleweights if Dricus wins this, especially impressively on Sunday morning?
I think it's a little bit too early to go there, but it certainly wasn't lost on Dricus that he could have back-to-back wins over Robert Whittaker, Sean Strickland, and Israel Adesanya, which would just be an absolutely incredible feat. And he's also a guy who hasn't tasted defeat in the UFC and has stayed true to every fiber in his bone while doing it. So, yeah, man, those are conversations that I think really wouldn't open after a first title defense, even given the strength of schedule. But he's doing some special things. He's got an entire nation behind him, and, it's got a big test, obviously, here come Sunday morning.
It'll be very interesting. Weigh-ins start at 6 a.m. local time here, so I think we're both going to get ready to go to bed here. But appreciate everyone watching. Appreciate your time, John. You're the man.